On November 18, 2021, the IRS published a final revision of Form W-8IMY, revision October 2021, that includes a number of changes and additions to the prior 2017 revision of the form. Most of the updates relate to the new rules under Section 1446A and 1446F. The Form W-8IMY added a line for Foreign Taxpayer Identification Number (FTIN) as well. Most interesting to note is that the certifications under penalties of perjury for this form now include a reference to proceeds in addition to income. Only a small change was made in Part 1 Identification of Entity, where Line 9 has been split into 9A for GIN and 9B for FTIN. Part 3 for Qualified Intermediary includes a number of changes. It begins with Box 14, which was updated to include references to Section 1446A and 1446F. The old Box 15B moved to new Box 15F. Box 15B was updated for QI to make certifications with respect to amounts realised from the sale of an interest in a publicly traded partnership (PTP) under Section 1446F. The old Box 15C moved to new Box 15G with edits. Box 15C was updated for a QI to make certifications as a nominee with respect distributions by a PTP. The old Box 15D moved to new Box 15H. New Box 15D was updated for a QI to certify that it's acting as a qualified securities lender, QSL, assuming certain primary withholding and reporting responsibilities. The old Box 15E moved to new Box 15I. New Box 15E is old Box 15G. There were no updates to this box. The new Box 15F is the old Box 15B. No updates here. The old Box 15F has been edited and is the new Box 15D. The new Box 15G is where old Box 15C was. It was updated to include reference to withholding statement. Old Box 15G is new Box 15E where there were no updates. New Box 15H is old Box 15D. No updates here. New Box 15I is old Box 15E. Again, no updates here. One note for QIs here is that they should consider including a statement that identifies to which accounts the certifications on the Form W-8IMY apply. Without this specification, a withholding agent may assume that the certifications on Form W-8IMY apply to all accounts held by the QI. Box 16A was updated to reference approval by the IRS to act as a QDD. And those were all of the changes to Part 3 of the form. Moving on, we find the next changes in Part 4 for non-qualified intermediaries. Box 17A was updated to remove QI and add qualified intermediary. Box 17B was updated to include a note for Forms W-8IMY provided for PTP interests. Those entities should see instructions for this Part 4, non-qualified intermediary, prior to checking this box. Box 17C was updated to exclude a distribution from a PTP from the certification. Box 17D was updated to include that the entity is acting as a QSL and is not a QI. Here the QSL certifies that it assumes primary withholding and reporting responsibilities with respect to certain payments. And finally for this section, a new Box 17E was added for entities providing an alternative withholding statement described in Treasury Regulation Section 1.1441-1E3 4C3. Moving on to Part 5 of the form, W-8IMY, for Territory Financial Institutions, we have a couple of updates here too. Box 18A was updated to remove references to possession of the United States and add territory of the United States. Box 18B was edited to include a reference to any reportable amounts and withholdable payments. Box 18C was edited to include a reference to any reportable amounts or a withholdable payment. New Box 18D added for a Territory FI to certify that it agrees to be treated as a US person with respect to amounts realised on sales of interest in PTPs. A new Box 18E added for a Territory FI to certify that it agrees to be treated as a US person and is a nominee with respect to distributions by PTPs. And finally, for this section, a new box 18F was added for a territory FI that is not acting as a nominee for distributions from PTPs and is providing withholding statements for distributions. This includes a note to review instructions for Part 5. Moving on to Part 6 for certain US branches, we'll see Box 19A was updated to include reportable amounts or reportable payments that are not distributions from PTPs or amounts realised on sales of interest in PTPs. Box 19B was updated to include reference to reportable amounts or withholdable payments. Box 19C was updated to include reference to a payment of a reportable amount. Box 19D was added for certain US branches to certify that they are acting as a US person with respect to amounts realised on sales of interest in PTPs. Box 19E was added for certain US branches to certify that they are treated as a US person and nominees with respect to distribution by PTPs. Box 19F was added for certain US branches not acting as a nominee for distribution from PTPs and providing withholding statements for the distributions with a note to refer to the instructions for Part 6. And that's all for Part 6. The next section to include updates in the 2021 Form IMY is Part 8, Non-Withholding Foreign Partnership, Simple Trust or Granted Trust. The first update here is Box 21B, was updated to include foreign granted trusts and a reference to Section 1446A. Box 21C was added for foreign partnerships to certify that they're receiving an amount realised on the transfer of interest in a partnership. Box 21D was added for foreign partnerships to certify that they are providing a withholding statement for a modified amount realised from the transfer. This Box 21D is checked only when Box 21C is checked and if it's applicable. And finally, Box 21E was added for foreign granted trusts to certify that they are providing Form W-8IMY on behalf of each grantor or owner to allocate the amount realised to each grantor or other owner under Treasury Regulation Section 1446F1C28. On to the last part of the form, Part 29 for certifications. We only have one update here, where this has been updated to include proceeds in addition to income. And lastly, we have electronic signature updates. The instructions have been updated to include additional guidance in the final regulations issued under Chapter 3 regarding the use of electronic signatures on withholding certificates. These rules state that a withholding agent may rely on an electronically signed withholding certificate if the beneficial owner provides any additional information or documentation requested by the withholding agent to support that the form was signed by the beneficial owner, or any other person authorised to do so. The instructions also include a reference to Regulation Section 1441-1E41B. Withholding agents will have 6 months from the publication date of this form to begin requesting the new 2021 revision. There were a lot of changes to the IMY in 2021, and we hope you found this video useful in guiding you through them. You can find more content like this and other form update videos over at www.complypro.com.